Hi everybody, Nate here from MyMOD, back again with another unusual video game story. This time we're going to be looking at Resident Evil and how it helped to inspire Edgar Wright, the famous Hollywood filmmaker, to make his first ever big screen debut, which was Shaun of the Dead. Stick around. So probably one of the most vivid memories I have of being completely scared shitless with regards to a video game was actually
Resident Evil 2.
A bizarre incident occurred in the outskirts of an American suburb called Raccoon City.
At the time of its release, I was 6 and blissfully ignorant of anything that was remotely connected to horror at the time. Of course, that was all about to change. So just before the turn of millennium, I was at a relative's summer barbecue, and like any 6-year-old in the 90s, I was inside trying to see what games I could play on the new PlayStation. It would be all the games that my mum couldn't buy for me. Or wouldn't buy for me. This experience must have imprinted on me pretty well, actually, because it's led to a fascination for Resident Evil that has led me all the way to this very day. As I watched my cousins play the first anxiety-ridden scramble to the police station, the game goes calm for a moment, and this was a perfect time for my cousins to convince me that nothing happens for a while, and now this is the part where you should have a go. The best way to describe my emotions at that point was excited but quite nervous, and it was almost like the same feeling you got jumping on a roller coaster. Anyone who knows Resident Evil knows that very early in the second game, you get a wonderful surprise when walking past a set of windows in the police station. Needless to say, the moment I was handed the controller, I walked straight into the jump scare. I handed the controller back as they all laughed, a little bit embarrassed, but I continued to watch from behind a pillow on the sofa. They then showed me famously the cutscene of the liquor and how it was introduced to you on the game for the first time. And from then on, I was completely horrified but hooked. Only seemed to be hooked at watching it though. This is probably the reason why 2 decades later I'm still watching YouTubers attempt to dismantle the Umbrella Corporation. It's strange that I have games that I play all the time, but when it comes to watching people play those games, it doesn't really interest me. Yet I'm absolutely fascinated by the Resident Evil universe and the lore behind it and what Capcom have done, but you only ever see me watching those games really. I played Resident Evil 4 the most, and I could play them all really, but there must have been like a psychological click that I've had in me from the experiences as a child that made me prefer to watch the gameplay as a way of experiencing it rather than actually playing the game. So in other words, I'm a big pussy when it comes to horror games. As a young film student from Gloucestershire, what I would consider to be my inspiration to be all that I could have been in the film world boiled down really to 2 names, Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg. Now these are true words coming from a fanboy, but Shaun of the Dead, in my opinion, is film masterpiece. A film masterpiece in its own right that was expertly delivered at the peak of its genre's evolution to the parodical stage, as I mentioned, to produce critical acclaim. Well, what does this have to do with Resident Evil, do you ask? Quite simply put, Shaun of the Dead would have not been around or even existed if it wasn't for Resident Evil. This is a quote taken from an article that was written by Edgar Wright for The Guardian. A flashpoint came to me when I ventured out once to buy milk at 5 in the morning after staying up playing Resident Evil. I was taken with how deserted and eerie the streets were. What would a British person do if zombies appeared now? So not just inspiration for the amazing film Shaun of the Dead, but Resident Evil gameplay was actually implemented in an episode of Spaced. This one also was directed by Edgar Wright, and it was written in some parts by Simon Pegg as well. They seem to be quite a good duo together when they make films. The particular episode is called Art, and it sees Tim, who Simon Pegg plays, attempt to ward off imaginary zombies in a hallucination after taking some amphetamines the night before and playing Resident Evil. This TV episode of Spaced actually became the precursor to what we eventually know to be the full feature film that we all love, known as Shaun of the Dead.
Want a cup of tea?
Yes.
I guess personally, it was nice for me when I was at university to know that people who I inspired to be at the highest level of their field incepted their careers by sitting at home and playing Resident Evil. That kind of related to me on a very personal level and helped me push my own development as a filmmaker and, what I inspire myself to be or to create. But a quote I remember reading at the time at university about Edgar was that the moment he put the video game down was the moment his career began to take momentum. Of course, being a huge gamer fan, that was one tough pill to swallow for me. But now we're in 2021, and in hindsight, there are millionaires now whose fortunes are built on doing just the opposite of what Edgar Wright said he was going to do back then. People now pick up the games to make millions. Who would have thought that? I'm sure Edgar probably didn't think that was going to be the case when he first made Shaun of the Dead, but it's interesting to think about how perceptions and demand has changed, even as little back as a decade. I hope you enjoyed this unusual story. We got good reception from the Jack Branning is Claude Speed in GTA, so we're going to continue to do more episodes on this. We're going to spread these out on a monthly basis though, because it is quite hard to pick up the source material for these stories. So I hope you bear with me. If you do enjoy it, we will be doing an unusual video game story on a monthly basis here at MyMOD TV. I hope you enjoyed it all, and we'll see you in the next video, guys. Take care. Have a lovely day.